gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
Isn't flat. And by the way, this is called gravity.
What is gravity?
You have no idea. Okay, next question.
Wow.
No, here's the difference. We can describe gravity. We can say what it does to other things. We can measure it, predict with it. But when you start asking, like, what it is, I don't know. And by the way, this is called gravity.
What is
When
gravity?
you start asking, like, what it is, I don't know. This is called gravity.
So according to Neil, this is called gravity. But when you ask Neil what gravity is, he doesn't know. He doesn't know what it is, he just knows what it's called, right? So let me ask you this, Neil. What is this called? How come that didn't drop? What's that called? What is this called, Neil? Is that called anti-gravity? Is that what it's called? I'm not gonna ask you if it is anti-gravity because you don't even know what gravity is. Apparently, a super scientist such as yourself and professional actor, you're only qualified to tell us what gravity is called. You're not qualified to tell us what it is. So again, Neely boy, how come I can't drop this helium balloon even when I try? Why is it rising? Is that anti-gravity, Neil? Is that what that's called? Because we all know you don't know what gravity is. So let me explain how density and buoyancy works, my friend. Wow. Well, Neil, since you don't know what gravity is, allow me to explain what density and buoyancy is. This microphone is more dense than the air in which surrounds it. A lot like the one you are holding, Neil. It's made of plastic, metal components, and the plastic and metal components of this microphone are more heavy than the air in which surrounds it. So therefore, when I drop it, it falls. No gravity, no attraction towards the theoretical center of the earth. No, no, no. This microphone is more dense than the air in which surrounds it. It won't fall until I pick it up and release it. When I choose to release it, it indeed does fall. Not because of gravity, but because the microphone is more dense than the air than which surrounds it. Now, on the flip side, what causes this to rise? Is this a case of anti-gravity, folks? Oh, no, no, no. This is a case of buoyancy. You see, there's helium inside this balloon. And even when I try to throw it down, it rises. How can the helium in this balloon overcome the force of gravity, which holds trillions of gallons of water stuck to a spinning ball? How can this helium rise and overpower the balloon? That's because the helium is less dense than the air in which surrounds it. So therefore, because of buoyancy, it rises. Yes, folks, there is no gravity and there is no anti-gravity. There is only density and buoyancy. Here it is once again, folks. Density and buoyancy. Density, buoyancy. 1, 2, 3. There you go, folks. Density and buoyancy. The microphone falls because it's more dense than the air in which surrounds it. The helium balloon rises because the helium in the balloon is less dense than the air in which surrounds it. Density, buoyancy, density, buoyancy. There is no gravity, only density and buoyancy.
One of the great challenges in life is knowing enough to think you're right, but not enough to know you're wrong.
Yeah. Well, that is a big problem with a lot of people that watch these YouTube videos.
That's
right?
what it is. They say, oh, this is right. Oh, my gosh. But they don't know enough to know why it's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. But you and Joey Rogaine, you guys know enough to know why it's wrong, right? You guys know enough to know why what you're doing and what you're saying is wrong. And aren't you posting that podcast onto YouTube for millions of people to see? Aren't both you clowns on many YouTube videos? Hundreds of YouTube videos? When you say people are watching these YouTube videos, you got to be more specific, because people are watching your YouTube videos and they just aren't smart enough to know what you guys are saying is wrong. But you guys are smart enough to know what you guys are saying is wrong, and you do it purposefully because you guys are professional actors and you're both sellout tools.
What is it about people that there's this very compelling need to find something out that other people don't know, like the world is flat, like dinosaurs aren't real, like that kind of stuff is very compelling to people.
So what I do in those cases, in the
Bigfoot.
Yeah. So what I do is I would say, instead of debating them, and some of your listeners are listening to this right now, all I would do is say, what is your best single bit of evidence for what you're claiming? And what would it take to show that you're wrong?
Oh, that's an easy one. My best single piece of evidence which supports the fact that the Earth is flat. My best single piece of evidence comes in from a researcher named Jenna Frito. Jenna Frito performed a wonderful experiment not only once, but twice, and in both instances, she got the same result and proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is no curvature upon the Earth. In the experiment that Jenna performed, she stood in the state of New York and looked across Lake Ontario at the Toronto skyline. She was able to see a white building known as the Rogers Centre. Now, the Rogers Centre is only 282 feet tall. Now, at 31 miles away across Lake Ontario, the 282-foot tall Rogers Centre should have been absolutely covered up by the Earth's curvature. but we can clearly still see the Rogers Center from 31 miles away. We can see the building from top to bottom when the entire building should be covered up by the supposed curvature of the Earth. And here's the kicker, Neil. Not only did she do this experiment once, she did this experiment twice and got the same result both times. And when you can do an experiment yourself that is observable, verifiable, and repeatable, that is indicative of a real scientific experiment, because that's what real science is. It's observable, verifiable, and repeatable. Here's her second experiment. She did the same exact experiment except got a little closer to the edge of the water. Now her observer height is only 6 foot. 6 foot in observer height, and she's looking 31 miles across Lake Ontario at the Toronto skyline, and she's looking at a white building, the Rogers Center, which is only 282 feet tall. This is a physical impossibility given the current curvature formula and online curvature calculators such as Metabunk. Jenna Frito was able to not only beat the online curvature calculator known as Metabunk, she was able to destroy the online curvature calculator. And she did it twice. So now, Neil, your job is to prove why we can see the Rogers Center from 31 miles away, even though it should be covered up by the Earth's curvature. And you ask, what would it take to prove me wrong? That would take you giving a verifiable measure of curvature across Lake Ontario.
All right, well, let's go with a simple one.
So that's what I would ask.
Okay.
And I've done this exercise, and it doesn't work. You know why?
Why?
Because there was a guy who didn't believe we went to the moon. We spent a third of our time in our last session there. So there's someone I know who doesn't believe we went to the moon. Let me just say he's skeptical. So I said, what kind of evidence would convince you? He said, images of the landing site of the Apollo missions. So I said, okay.
Well, Neil, I'm not only a skeptic of the moon landing, I know darn well it never happened at all. Because I went looking for the landing site images from the Apollo missions, and here's what I found. A black and white grainy picture on NASA's website. That's supposed to be the bottom section of the lunar module they left behind? Let me ask you this, Neil. Is this something that we could fake with today's technology? The answer's definitely yes. Is this something we could have faked with yesterday's technology many, many years ago? The answer is yes. Do you really believe that's the bottom section of the lunar module? I don't.
Here's a website where we sent, in fact, it wasn't us, it was the Chinese. I think it was the Chinese or Europeans. Sent a probe, to an orbiter, to the moon so that it was close enough, because ground-based telescopes are not they don't have the resolution to see the landing sites. But if you get close enough to the moon, you can. It photographed the entire surface of the moon, and there were the landing sites, and you saw the rover tracks and the base for the lunar module. And so that night he went home and found it. And then he came back and says, well, NASA could have faked that. Well, I'm done with you. We have no more to talk about.
So let me get this straight. You sent that poor guy to NASA's website so he could look at this grainy picture of the leftover base of the lunar module that they claim is the same as the one in this photo. Yeah, look at the base of the lunar module, the bottom section. They say that that's it right there, folks. That grainy black and white picture is the bottom section of the lunar module, because as we all know, the top section left the moon and went and joined up with the lunar orbiter, which we didn't get to see. So let's watch them leave the moon. See, there goes the top section of the lunar module. That doesn't look fake at all, huh? And it's gonna go join up with the lunar orbiter, which we don't get to see. And those of you who believe we went to the moon actually have to believe that that's how we left the moon and came back. Wow. So let's look at it again in slow motion and just pay attention to the bottom section, because the astronauts were supposedly inside the top section, so the bottom section there, the base of the lunar module, should still be left over on the moon. And Neil sent that poor guy to NASA's website so you can look at this grainy black and white photo, which is supposedly that same base of that same lunar module. So is this something a government agency could have faked, and a professional actor like Neil deGrasse Tyson sent this poor guy specifically to the government agency website to look at a terrible, grainy black and white photo? Oh, but if that's not enough evidence for you, if that's not enough to convince you, Neil has nothing else for you. He's done with you. He won't even debate. He's done.
Here's a website where we sent, in fact, it wasn't us, it was the Chinese. I think it was the Chinese or Europeans, sent a probe, to an orbiter to the moon so that it was close enough, because ground-based telescopes are not, they don't have the resolution to see the landing sites. But if you get close enough to the moon, you can. It photographed the entire surface of the moon, and there were the landing sites, and you saw the rover tracks and the base for the lunar module. And so that night he went home and found it. And then he came back and says, well, NASA could have faked that. Well, I'm done with you. We have no more to talk about.
So let's get this straight. Neil couldn't remember whether it was a probe or an orbiter, and he couldn't remember whether the Chinese sent it up or the Europeans. So it was either this one country or a whole big continent full of a bunch of countries. Either or, and it was either a probe or an orbiter. So he doesn't know what went up there. He just knows that that is sufficient evidence that we went to the moon.
Well, NASA could have faked that. Well, I'm done with you. We have no more to talk about. Because he's not ready to be convinced.
Well, that's a weird one, too.
I gave him the evidence he asked for.
Exact evidence.
That would convince him, and it did not convince him.
Did you hear that, folks? He wasn't ready to be convinced. That's what Neil said. The guy doesn't believe we went to the moon, and he wasn't ready to be convinced. Apparently, you have to be convinced of the truth. Yeah, they can't just be on the up and up and tell us the truth. Oh, no, no, no. You have to be convinced it's the truth. It takes a professional actor, apparently, like Neil, in order to convince you of the truth. And even in some cases, even he can't convince you.
That's a singular event.
I have no other conversation with him.
That's a singular event, which you could say in one way or another. Like, it is possible that someone could fake a singular event. They can't fake whether or not the world's flat, right? Like, that, to me, is the scariest one. That there's so many people out there that believe the world is flat. Because you could literally see the curvature of the Earth from a plane.
Now, when we use our senses that we were created with, we can see that the horizon is horizontal. Think of that. Horizon. Horizontal. They don't call it the curvizon, do they? That's because no matter how high you go, the horizon is always flat and horizontal, and it rises with you to your eye level. This would be impossible if the Earth was a sphere or an oblate spheroid or a pear. Because if the Earth was indeed a sphere, an oblate spheroid, or in your case, a pear, that means as you gained altitude, you would have to look downward in order to see the horizon. However, this does not match our everyday experiences. If we were to get in a hot air balloon together, Neil, and we were to go up there, the horizon would be flat and level. Hey, speaking of level, have you ever been to the ocean, the sea? They call it sea level for a reason. They don't say sea curve, do they? In fact, it doesn't matter whether you're at sea level or on top of Mount Everest. Whether you're looking out the window of an airplane, or if you send up a balloon 100,000 feet above the earth, that horizon is flat. Hard evidence that the earth is not curving in any way.
There's many satellite images of the Earth in its entirety, and one of the things that the argument was how come every photograph of the Earth is a compilation of photographs? Well, because they're all taken from 300 miles up. The Earth is huge.
Yeah, here's way bigger than 300 miles.
Yeah, you have to take compilations.
Mosaic it. Yeah.
You have to. That's the only way to get
well,
images
except
of the
for
Earth.
the Apollo photo. The Apollo 17 coming back has the Earth. That's the famous one that has Africa and Antarctica in view. It's the full Earth. Very few full Earths. It's very hard to get a full Earth single photo.
Of course.
Oh, the hypocrisy spewing out of both you two individuals is absolutely hilarious. First off, Joey Rogaine says we have many satellite images of the Earth in its entirety. And in the very next breath, he says, I don't know why people complain about the Earth photos being composites. I mean, the satellites are only 300 miles away. I mean, the Earth is so big. Hey, wait a minute, Joey Rogaine. Didn't you just say in the breath before that that we have many satellite images of the Earth in its entirety? And then Neil goes on to say, yeah, we do have some images of the Earth in its entirety, but it's really hard to get. They're just so hard to get. So it was easy enough to go to the moon in the 60s and 70s and take pictures of the Earth in its entirety. But now in 2017, we lost the technology to go to the moon. We can't quite figure out how to get back there again. And it's a lot harder to get farther enough away from the Earth to take full photos of the Earth in its entirety. So now we rely on satellites, which are a lot closer, and we have to stitch these photographs together in Photoshop in order to make composite images of the Earth. However, we have satellites that are supposedly traveling out there through space, getting Jupiter as an entire ball, and getting Saturn as an entire ball, and getting Mars as an entire ball, but they can't flip around one of those satellites and get the Earth as an entire ball?
Well, it's just bizarre because snipers have been using the literal curve of the Earth to plan where bullets go. That's
if
how
they
you
want it that
plot
precise.
out.
Oh,
When you have to. When you shoot at a mile, when you're shooting like well out over 1,000 yards, those factors.
So let me think. A mile. I have to ask, how much curvature of the Earth do you get after a mile? It's an
You
interesting
also get drop.
question.
You get drop and curvature.
That'd be gravity drop.
Yes.
And then curve. Yeah. So both of those.
Yeah.
You two clowns don't even realize you just left yourselves open for the knockout punch. And not just you, Joey boy. You too, Neil. You're both going down on this one. And Joey boy, it's been a while since last time I destroyed you. So say hello to your buddy and mine, Eddie Bravo, because I know for a fact he's been watching my videos. Hi, Eddie. But this is it. This is it, fellas. Here it comes. Pucker up, punks, because after these next succession of clips, you two won't be getting up from this one. And there's gonna be a lot of people who are never gonna look at you the same ever again. And once they go flat, they won't ever go back. Ask any real sniper and they will tell you they do not have to take the Coriolis effect into account whatsoever when shooting a long-range target. Any supposed sniper who mentions the Coriolis effect and having to take it into account is full of BS and they're talking out of their ass. The Coriolis effect is absolutely made up. There is no curvature of the Earth and the Earth is not spinning. Therefore, snipers do not take this into account. In fact, the entire notion of a sniper stopping while he adjusts his sights to take this into account is purely ridiculous.
Okay, hold still now. This is for Obamacare, Guantanamo Bay, the Patriot Act, and that damn ugly dude you married. Perfect. You're all lined up. Now all I have to do is correct the Coriolis effect. So that's 51.518744 and minus 0.129039. Bearing to target is northwest. Average muzzle velocity? What the?
Hello, Sniper Rifles Are Us. How can I help you?
Yeah, hi. Could you tell me the average muzzle velocity for a SB-40 Sure-Kill?
That will be in your ballistic table, sir.
No, I don't have my ballistic tables.
Okay, I'll look that up for you.
I'm kinda in a hurry here, so don't put me on...
Oh, please.
Oh, shit. At the Copacabana, the hottest spot north of Havana. Here...
Hello, sir.
Hi.
The average muzzle velocity is 1,024 feet per second.
1,024 feet per second. Thank you.
Is there anything else I can help you with today?
No,
Are you sure? Have you seen our new line of novelty assassination tools? We're doing a special on exploding toilet seats.
No, exploding toilet seats? Really? How much, no, it's okay, thank you.
Okay. You have a nice day now.
1,024 feet per second. That's perfect. I have you now, Obama. What? Where'd he go? Shit!
Imagine the scenario, if you will. We have our missiles pointed at the enemy. We have our target locked in. We're loaded and ready to go. Our enemy has their missiles pointed at us. They've locked in. They're ready to go. Both of us have our hand on the button. We are ready to launch the missiles and blow each other sky high. But just before we blow each other to hell and back, we gotta go ahead and get some nerds to do some spherical trigonometry so we hit the target.
About UFOs. You can co-opt the person and say, hey, you want to know UFOs? We'll show you the real deal. But not only can you never talk about it publicly, you have to be a debunker publicly.
I'll tell the government right now, tell you right now if you're listening, NSA, CIA, I'm available, okay? If you show me all the real wreckage, I swear to God, I will make fun of that crap to the end of time. I'll make up stories. I'll lie to my mother. I don't care. You show me a UFO, I'll lie to my mother. Thank you very much for your time. That was very fascinating. Really interesting conversation.
Well, I believe I just destroyed your argument about snipers adjusting for the supposed curvature of the Earth there, Joey boy. And I also showed what type of human being you were when you told the world if you were just simply shown an unidentified flying object that you would indeed lie to your own mother. you would sell out your own flesh and blood for just a peek, a gander at an unidentified flying object, or at least one that you were told was a real unidentified flying object. That would be enough for Joey to sell out his own mother. So now I'm all done with Joey Rogaine, and that just leaves you and me, Neil. You're next.
So let me think. A mile, I have to ask, how much curvature of the Earth do you get after a mile? It's an
you
interesting
also get drop.
Question.
You get drop and curvature.
That'd be gravity drop.
Yes.
And then curve. Yeah, so both of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a...
So let me think. A mile, I have to ask, how much curvature of the Earth do you get after a mile? It's an
you
interesting
also get drop.
Question.
You get...
Well, there it was, Neil. Your fatal flaw. You just left yourself open for the knockout punch. You admitted you didn't know how much the Earth would curve after 1 mile. How can you not know that? If you don't know how much the Earth should curve after 1 mile, well then that means you don't know the correct mathematical formula to determine the supposed Earth's curvature. So if you don't know the formula to determine the Earth's curvature, and you don't know how much the Earth should be curving after only 1 mile, how are you ever going to go to battle against a well-prepared flat earther such as myself and many others and ever come out victorious? You admitted already you didn't know what gravity is, and now you admitted you don't know how much the Earth would curve after only 1 mile. Neil, I think it's safe to say this is an unfair fight, and your handlers are throwing in the towel. You are done. You're done, Neil. And if you ever want to continue this debate in person, I would be glad to smash you and destroy you at any time, any place. You pick the location, Neil.
What is
You
gravity?
start asking, like, what it is? I don't know. So let me think. A mile, I have to ask, how much curvature of the Earth do you get after a mile? It's an
you also
interesting
get drop.
question.
You get drop.
So how do we know the Earth is not flat?
We don't. It's flat.
Okay. Glad we established that.
On HuffPo.
Ladies and gentlemen, your voting will determine the shape of the world champion. If you think the Flat Earth asshole won this debate, give this video a thumbs up. If you think Neil deGrasse Tyson won this debate, give this video a thumbs down. And as always, share this video and make sure you're still subscribed to Flat Earth Asshole's channel regardless, because YouTube has been unsubbing his subs without their permission. So make sure you're still subbed to the Flat Earth Asshole channel regardless. And stay tuned for more epic battles such as this one. Thank you and good night, folks. You can order your very own lunar module or a homeless tweaker shelter t-shirt today by clicking the link in the description below.